Everyone is different. You're having a really bad day and things don't look right. And you call the office and you say, I just don't know what to do anymore. I would tell you that that is not how it was meant to be. And it's not fair for you to go through life living a difficult life. But a lot of people that live in our parish don't realize that we're there, or don't know that you don't have to have insurance to go there. You can go there and we work strictly on your income. You could pay $2 to come in and see a doctor, to see a therapist. We have an anxiety group. We have a parenting group. You would be very comfortable being there. You can come in and we can talk to you and we can comfort you. We can be friends. We can understand. We can listen to what your problems are and what has caused you to feel the way that you feel. In the end, you would be very pleased that you ended up there. I've said it once before, but I'll say it again. It's more fulfilling than anything else that job could possibly give me, by seeing a patient or a child or an adult's life completely turned around. That's a good day. Hi, my name is Lisa Lopez, and I'm a nurse at the Ascension Counseling Center.
Hello everyone, I'm Lisa Weber Curry, Manager of Clinical Services at Ascension Counseling Center. You're watching Ascension Counseling Center's video newsletter, where we talk about the services we offer and how you can benefit from them. Thanks for joining us, and in this episode, we'll examine mother-daughter relationships, common causes of conflict, and how to navigate the twists and the turns we face in these relationships. Stay with us for the next half hour or so. We'll be right back after this message.
Ascension Parish, a parish steeped in tradition. It's a place where generations of families have continued to enjoy a lifestyle that centers on community living and community celebration. It's a place where we care about each other and we care about ourselves. For more than 50 years, the Ascension Counseling Center has continued the tradition of helping individuals and families change behaviors and change lives. The Ascension Counseling Center.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, Lisa.
We're back again for another episode and for a really, really touchy topic this morning.
Yes, it is kind of touchy, but it's something that really needs to talk about, and we're going to talk about mother-daughter relationships, and in particular, mothers and their adult daughters. Yes. And, you know, Lisa, the mother-daughter relationship is the primary one, the very first relationship that we have.
Yes.
And as infants, when we're born, we really rely on our mothers to keep us alive and to help us to thrive and to grow. Mm-hmm. And from there, that relationship only strengthens and moves on. So that relationship is very, very important.
It's important, and it's a solid one.
It is a solid one.
Until we get to adulthood.
Until we get to adulthood.
Okay.
And then things begin to change. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how the mother-daughter relationship may change, some of the pitfalls that you might run into, and what you can do about that. Okay. And so we will talk about a few things today in terms of, and you know, mother-daughter relationships, they can run the whole gamut to being great and very satisfying. Like, for instance, you and I both had beautiful, godly mothers that we were very close to.
Right.
Your mother has passed. Mine is still alive. I see her every single week, and that's a highlight of my week. And they go all the way from there to people who have no relationship with their mother, and then everything in between. Yeah. And so what we're going to talk about is more people who are still in a relationship with their mother, but maybe there are some challenges going on there. Right. And what we hope to help you to do is look at the challenges in your relationship and not your mother or your daughter, and say, you're the problem. Yeah. We always say, you know, we've talked about a lot of different relationships, couples, and
yes, we have. Yeah.
This is the first time we're talking about mother and daughter, but really, the relationship can be the same, in the sense that when I do couples counseling, I always tell people, You're never going to be successful resolving your problems if you stand face to face, pointing at each other and saying, you're the problem.
Right.
But if you stand side by side, point at the issue and say, that's the problem, and we're going to solve it together. And that's what we want mothers and daughters to look at today.
Move away from blaming each other
absolutely.
to blaming the problem.
The
and then
problem
you can
and
work
how
on a
can we
solution.
resolve it. So we're going to try to give you a different way to look at your problem so that you can interpret it differently, and hopefully that will free you up to make different decisions and kind of get over some of the woundedness that mothers and daughters can sometimes cause each other.
That's so important. Change your perspective and you can actually change your life.
Absolutely.
So that's so important.
So true.
And I like the way you start out first sharing that we typically think about mother-in-law relationships and that those are the ones rife with conflict. But actually it can happen in mother and daughter relationships as well.
Yes, and the relationships, you know, with mother-in-law, you may have conflicts about how to do things or whatever, but with your mother, you can be much more wounded in that relationship than in the mother-in-law relationship. So the first one that we're going to talk about is when mothers and their adult daughters move in different directions.
Okay.
Now, the goal of parenting is to take children from dependent infants and to turn them into independent, self-sufficient adults.
Right.
And so we want to raise children so that they grow up, they get educated, they get a job, they can support themselves, they can support a family. That means they have to become an independent person, separate from their mother.
Exactly.
Sometimes that becomes really difficult. Sometimes the mom experiences that as a loss, and she needs to grieve that.
I think that's so important because I don't think mothers ever stop and think about it that way.
In that way,
Yes.
that instead of feeling a loss or trying to continue to draw them back in, they need to look at that as, wow, I did a great job.
Right.
Pat myself on the back. This was the goal of it all. And I've heard of mothers who will, you know, when they're interacting with their adult daughters, they'll take their car away. They'll do things like that, trying to make them move home.
Right.
Truly self-sufficient daughter that you've raised successfully will figure out how to remain in her own home and work around all of that. And instead of being frustrated, that should be a point of joy and pride for a mother that she raised a daughter who can take care of herself.
Right.
And that daughter is less likely to be victimized later in
Exactly.
life.
Because you've given them the tools to succeed on their own.
independent, yes.
Yeah, to be autonomous individuals. But I think mothers sometimes struggle with the fact that I raised them, they're leaving home, and as you said before, it's a loss, but they don't recognize it as a loss. So if you don't see it as a loss, you don't know you need to grieve that loss and let go. Pretty much the same as we grieve someone who's passed on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes in the effort to keep that connection with the daughter, mothers might be a little bit intrusive into their lives, you know. And so we don't necessarily need to call as often, go over as often, ask every detail about every relationship they have, including ones with boyfriends or spouses.
Right.
You know, sometimes we need to know that we need to let that go and not know everything about their life, and giving your opinion about their life and all of those other things.
Yeah, sometimes we need to wait to be invited in because after all, now we're dealing with an adult. And as you say, you see the pulling back and forth. Mothers kind of push them out the door, want them to be autonomous, but then when you feel that loss, you try to figure out ways to get them back home again. And our adult daughters will resent that because they want to be independent.
And they want our mother's recognition of that fact.
Exactly.
You know?
You're doing well.
Yeah.
Even if they are failing or making a mistake, sometimes all we can do is provide the information but allow them to make their own decisions.
And they have to, and that's how we learn.
Exactly.
You know, most of us learn that way. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the solutions, because we don't
Okay.
want to just identify the problem. We always want to give you a solution. And so it's very important that mothers begin to express confidence in their daughters' decisions and in their choices. This can be hard for several reasons. First, you know, it's hard to let go of that conviction that mom knows best,
Yes.
you know. And that's been true your whole life, because you did know better than an 8-year-old, 7-year-old, a 15-year-old. But now we're talking about an adult. And you have to recognize that maybe you don't know best. Maybe you have been wrong on occasion. Maybe you
Right.
don't know the best solution. And especially relationships and the world and technology and everything has changed so much.
A lot.
Maybe
yes.
you're not as up to date with how things are working in a day-to-day life as you need
Yeah,
to be.
Exactly.
And then secondly, mothers really, it's like they have a PhD in worrying. So they never let go of that. It's hard for them to let go of the worry. And a part of that is if you feel like you want to warn them, I see you headed down a bad path. And mothers who believe that are going to, every time you get together, you're going to say, this is not a good idea.
Right.
That's going to prevent your daughter from wanting to preserve that intimate relationship and go over. And sometimes, you know, we talk to families a lot. Sometimes in a family, it's about you as a parent or a mother learning how to handle your anxiety about your child making self-destructive decisions.
Right.
You don't have the power to change that. And you can't wait until your child makes good decisions for you to have peace of mind. You have to learn how to do that even when your children are in a bad place. So it's not about warning them so that they can quit that so that you can have joy. It's about learning to separate yourself from their self-destructive choices so that you can be in your best place even if they're not in theirs.
And I think that's so important, and it's difficult for mothers to do. But I think one of the ways they can do it is looking at it differently, because our children often mirror what we've taught them. And they watch our behavior more than what we say. It is our behavior that they watch. So if we show them that we're not worriers, that we have confidence in them, that we're going to pray them through any situation. I really love that saying, you need to have a praying mom. It's really important. And we pray them through any situation, they will learn, I don't need to worry. You know what? My mom let go and things worked out. So I will do the same with my children. I'm safe to take chances and go out into the world and build the life that I want, because I can see my mom's not worried about me. She knows that if I need her, I will contact her. That releases the mom from all that anxiety, and it allows your child to live their life. Peace is the result of that.
And that's so very important.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like you say, life is really, you take risks every day. You have to be convinced that you can handle whatever comes. I think that's one of the things that helps people not to worry. The idea that this may not turn out well, it may turn into a calamity, but you know, we're going to make it work.
Exactly.
It's going to be okay.
And it will. And you made me think about something with the risk taking. I remember when my youngest daughter said to me, I want to jump out of an airplane. And I'm going to do it eventually, Mom. And she said it, and I thought in my head, well, I hope that goes away. I hope it's just a fleeting thought. A few months later, she calls me up, I'm about to jump out of an airplane. And you want to worry and stress, and you want to say, don't do it. But I said, go, girl. You go and do it. You have fun. I have prayed you up. Go and do it. Send me the video. She did it. She sent me the video. I had something to brag to my friends about. But we have to let them live their lives. And that's one of the reasons why I think she feels safe in telling me I'm about to do something that you may not agree with, you may be fearful of, but I'm going to do it. And she knows I'm not going to show my fear. I'm going to say, go for it.
That's
Talk
great.
to the
Yes.
fear with my husband and God, but I tell her, go for
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
All right, there's another thing that we want to talk about that can sometimes cause problems in mothers and daughters relationships, and that's something that we call overcommunication.
Yes.
female relationships are predominantly about talk,
Yes.
you know.
Face
so,
to face.
So like a lot of times male relationships are about doing and going to sports, nonverbal,
Right.
often based on shared activities. But with
Yeah.
women, we will get together and talk. Even
With
if we
the
get
intent
together
of talking.
Yes,
That's we
that we're
know
going to get
ahead of
together
time.
for that purpose.
Yes.
And even if that's not the purpose, that's
It
what we
ends
end
up
up
being it.
doing.
Yes.
And so relationships that are heavily involved with talk and communication, you know, sooner or later we're going to say something stupid, something hurtful, you
Right.
know. And so a family member said to me one time, you know, you've said something hurtful, you've said some hurtful things in the past. And I've said, well, you know, first of all, I'm sorry. But secondly, I'm going to do that, you know. Part of being in a relationship is we say things before we think,
Right.
or we don't think them through. And so if our relationships are primarily about talk and relationships, the chances are greater that we are going to say something hurtful.
Yeah.
And so we just need to realize that, you know, since we have more of an opportunity to say the wrong thing, then we probably are. But it's very important for us that we accept the fact that, you know, one of the things I said to this family member is, I hope that you know that I'm not a mean-spirited person and I'm not
Right.
trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
But I give you permission from now on when I say something hurtful, stop me right there
Exactly.
and I will apologize and we'll talk about what did I really mean.
Right.
So it's very important that whenever we're communicating, that we're able to communicate not only about all of these issues, but about that very thing. I
Right.
feel hurt by what you said. And then that we can have that conversation and work it through. And it's very important, I think. Some people believe that their mother is trying to deliberately hurt them.
Yes.
If you have that attitude, then everything is going to be hurtful.
Right.
And look, I'm not naive. I know there are some mothers out there who are intentionally hurtful.
Right.
to
That's why
their
we're having
daughters.
this conversation.
That is. And so as a daughter or a mother who, with a daughter, you know, I know that I talked to one woman and she said her mother was elderly now and she had Alzheimer's and she had four siblings. There were 5 children. The mother had been mean to the children all her life and none of them would go and take care of the mother now that she had dementia except this one woman. And she said, every time I go, mother's still mean to us. It's worse. And it's re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
So we need to understand that some people have limitations in that way, and we need to learn how to be protective of ourselves
Very important.
so that we're not allowing those things to be said. And so, for instance, you might begin to say immediately to your mother, that's not an appropriate thing to say to me, or that kind of thing is very hurtful, or this topic is not on the table for us
Right.
when we discuss it. Now, if your mother responds to that and lets it go, then great, you move on with your relationship. But if the other person does not respect your limits, you may have to say, whenever that topic comes up, we're going to have to cut our visits short because
Very
it's
important.
too hurtful for me to have that conversation. And then you follow through on that. If your mother brings it up again and you say, remember, this is a topic that we said we wouldn't discuss because it's
off
hurtful for
limits,
me,
yes.
and she continues and doesn't let it drop, then you say, remember we had this conversation that when this topic came up, if we didn't drop it, I was going to leave. And so I'm going to leave now. I love you. I'll be back next week, but I'm going right now.
Right.
And so we need to protect ourselves, set our own boundaries, if the person that we're in a relationship can't do it for themselves.
Right. And daughters, listen, that's very important because so many women have a problem with that. It's hard to say, I'm not going to stay there and take care of my mom. I'm not going to do this or that. when you're being mistreated. But you have to protect yourself, or else you're doing all those things with a lot of resentment, and you walk away with that unresolved, and it's going to flow into all of your other relationships. So you need to protect yourself.
You really do. And, you know, we think that other people will just not hurt us when they're aware of it, but, you know, that's really not true. And so we have to be able to protect ourselves.
We do. And I like that you say we should take a page from the men's book, with them just hanging out for the sake of hanging out. And that should help us with our communication.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how that can help us.
Well, it can help us in the sense that, you know, we can actually, if we're going to, sometimes, you know, we just think we'll go over and I'll just hang out at your house. But it can be helpful if we say we're going to run errands, or we're going to go to a festival, or we're going to go shopping, or doing other activities. And especially if you're in a relationship that is maybe intentionally hurtful, or you know that the other person is not intending to hurt you, but they just have no filter and they just gonna, then it's even more important that you schedule activities that are gonna prevent talking. So you want to
at least
you know,
minimize
it. Yes.
Talking,
so you don't. It's not that you have to stay separate from each other, but you just plan other activities that, you know, are not going to allow that deep conversation. And even if, like, especially if you know the other person, your mom won't have that conversation with you if there's a third person, bring a third person with you. You do the things that you need to do to protect yourself without having to sever that relationship entirely.
And a lot of times when you're doing activities, you can kind of talk about more difficult situations. You just kind of throw it out in the moment when you're having a good time, and you just make it softer. Hey, what did you think about this? And it just sounds, that person is already in a good mood, so they're more likely to be receptive, and they can say, well, I thought this, that, and the other, and you're continuing with your activity while still talking about the situation, but you're not angry because you're doing something both of you love. For instance, shopping. You know, so if you're together shopping, helping each other out, you can talk about things then.
And I even like that point about, you know, if you're out shopping, you're out in public, and maybe your loved one will say something that's hurtful in private, but not out in public. So that kind of helps as well.
That's a very good point. It really does. And I like that in men's relationships, when they're doing activities, it's not that they avoid the serious subjects. They come up, but they kind of just pop up, and they deal with it and move on through their activities. And that's a good way we can learn to do it.
And, you know, something you said is kind of triggering a thought, the idea that men will have these difficult conversations, they have them and they move on. And we know that kids are that way, children are that way. They can be playing, they can have a huge fight, and then an hour later they're all playing again.
Long.
You know, men can do it, children can do it. We as women need to learn to be able to do it.
We do.
Have a difficult conversation and then move on.
Right. Exactly. Don't hold grudges.
Don't hold a grudge.
Say what needs to be said and then move on. Yes. That's so important. So you talk about another area, overcoming distance.
And by distance we mean that, you know, physical distance.
Okay.
So you know, nowadays it's so common for people not to even live in the same state anymore. Your daughter goes off to college, she meets somebody there, gets married, you know, settles down there. And as we're talking about communications and difficult communications, we know how important nonverbal communication is. Facial expressions and tone of voice and what the body is doing. And so face-to-face communication is really best if we want to understand all the nuances of what the person is trying to tell us. But the more we talk by phone, by email, by text, we lose that context. We lose, and it's so easy for somebody, you know, you've heard people say, I was just making a joke by text, and it just, it caused a lot of difficulty. So we need to understand that as we're not communicating face to face, as we're communicating through a distance, we're going to lose a lot of those nonverbal cues that help us interpret accurately what the other person is saying. And so we may need to give more detail and say, you know, like there's times I start a conversation with people and I'll say, I'm not scolding.
Mhm.
I'm just kind of
Right.
telling you, okay, I'm not mad, I'm not scolding. And sometimes we need to preface or wrap up our conversations with those kind of comments
Very
so that the
important.
other person really, because when
Yeah.
we're not face to face, we're going to lose a lot.
We do, and I do the same thing. Wrapping up, I'll say, well, I'll remind them, look, this is not me judging you. I'm in support of whatever you decide.
Mhm.
You asked for an opinion, so here's my opinion. But whatever you decide, I'm supporting you. But also, what I've learned, because my daughters have moved away from time to time as well, is I listen more on the phone, because you do lose that nonverbal ability to see what's really going on with them. On the phone, people can tell you whatever, but if you can't see their whole body movement, then you miss that. So I learned to really just listen. As the saying goes, we have 2 ears to listen more and just 1 mouth. So I really get quiet and really listen. And if you listen really well, you can hear. It's not what's being said, it's what's not being said. And if you hear that, then you're able to be there and support your daughters and help them and say, hey, sounds like you might be going through something, but I'm here for you. And then maybe you can follow it up with the solution, which is what you're about to tell us.
Yes.
What we can do.
And, you know, it's often, and this is really actually, this will work in all situations, not just the one where you can't see the nonverbal, but
Right.
as soon as you notice yourself starting to get offended or take something, you know, the wrong way, it's a good idea just to stop and clarify and say, wait, I'm a little bit confused, instead of starting with the attack.
Yes.
Because I know people, they'll hear something, and whether it's accurate or not, they may have come in at the tail end, and they'll just pounce on that, and it becomes a
Right.
big drama in the family. So instead, it's helpful to say, wait, I think I misunderstood you. I'm just trying to clear this up. Did you mean that blank? And
Right.
they can tell you whether or not they meant it in that way. That's a really important one
It
if
is.
we're not communicating in
Right.
person, face to face. And so, you know, once you feel like you're starting to be rubbed the wrong way, that's a sign that you need to clarify what the other person is saying.
Definitely. And then if you still feel like, well, I still don't fully know what's going on with my daughter or whomever you're speaking with, I have this gut feeling, this instinct. There's something more there. FaceTime, Skype.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays technology gives us the opportunity
Right.
to do that, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you could talk face to face. And, you know, when my husband and I moved here from out of state, I came first for the job, and we were trying to get the house sold.
Yeah.
You know, we both had a camera on our computers, and we would just set up our laptops in the wherever we
Yeah.
were and just let it run. So like we could just be with each other,
Right.
watch me cooking, and you know, I mean,
Yeah.
technology will allow us to share each
It
other's
does.
lives,
It does.
even if we're not in the same room, you know.
Exactly.
So those are things that we can take advantage of as
It's
well.
so important, and it lets you see each other. You can see that your daughter is well. She can see that you're well. You can share smiles, because oftentimes between mother and daughter, it's just that look. You look at each other and you just smile. Well, you can do that with FaceTime and
Yes.
Skype. Technology. We have to learn it and
We
take
have to
advantage
use
of it.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're also going to talk about the mothers being the chief communicators.
And listen, this is, I mean,
that's
pretty much
every
common in
family.
every family.
Yes.
You know, where the mother becomes the primary person who relates information to all the family members. So one sibling is going to contact, everybody calls her, lets her know what's going on, and then she's responsible for, you know, telling everybody. It's kind of a mixed blessing. It means the mom is responsible for contacting everybody.
Sure.
And she's the one who has to decide what gets told. Like maybe there are some things she feels like are not appropriate to tell everyone. That puts her in that position of having to decide who gets told what. And so then if somebody else is mad because they don't know, and she's the one who had to make that decision, you know, then they get mad at her.
Yes.
Or like our joke in our family is there's 5 of us kids. My mom may tell one of us something 5 times, instead of all 5 of us one time.
Yes.
And so one time that happened, and something happened, and I realized, oh, I was the only one who didn't get the news. My first instinct was, well, I can't believe she didn't call me and tell me.
Right.
And then I realized, wait a minute, that's on me. If I didn't call my sibling and find out what's going on in her life, that's my responsibility. It's not anybody else's.
Right.
So actually, as part of not blaming your mom and getting her stuck in that position, this is a solution that's going to help all your relationships.
Right.
Because it's better for me and my siblings if we talk directly.
Exactly.
I'm going to hear all the news, plus I'm going to probably hear something that they're not going to tell my mom.
Yes.
And I become closer to them and more intentional in keeping our relationship going if I am making the effort to contact them rather than just passively waiting for my mom to tell me what's going on with them.
Exactly. Yeah, it just makes for better relationships all around. Mom gets to breathe and not be blamed for information she forgot to share with someone else. And I know it happens all the time because I only have 2 daughters, and they tell me I will tell one something, and I'll say, but I told you that. And she said, no, you told your other daughter that. So it happens all the time, and I'll just say, you know what, you're probably right. So let me tell this daughter. So it happens. Just let them communicate, and I find myself saying to them, one daughter will call and say, well, did you tell the other daughter this, that, or the other? No, but you can tell her. I'm getting out of that conversation. And it works better. Sometimes they get a little mad, and then they think about it, and they'll come back later and say, well, it made sense that we talked to each other instead of involved you. So initially you may feel a little bit out of sorts because you're so used to being in that role. But if you let it go and let people communicate with each other, you feel better, and you can focus on something else as a mom.
Absolutely. And, if you get around to it, you can tell them. But when somebody else says you need to tell all the family, then that puts you in the position of now you've got to make sure you contact everybody. And, it can sometimes be a chore depending on what else is going on.
It can be, and it can be frustrating because if you are like, for instance, I'm the one who lets everybody know. I text, hey, it's such and such birthday today. Please remember. God forbid I forget or I'm delayed, then it becomes an issue. It becomes you. So I learned that the hard way, and I started saying, I'm not doing that anymore. Whomever family it is, you send out the text because I'm not going to be blamed for being human and forgetting. So you have to learn to say, hey, this didn't work. Let me back off. Let me not be the chief communicator all the time.
And in terms of my family, my brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, everybody like that, I say if I want them to know what's going on in my life, it's my responsibility to let them know, not to have my mom or somebody else do that. And so I've actually started a group text. So many people, I have to do 2 different group texts where I'll just drop in some little something where I went. It's not a big deal. They're probably wondering, why is she telling me this? But I feel like if I want them to know what my life is like on a daily basis and really get to know me, it's my job to do that. And so I'm intentional about sending them texts about anything that comes up. I volunteered at the balloon festival. We went on a vacation. We stopped at the, wherever we stopped. And I send that. And that is going to increase my relationship with them.
Exactly.
And as we think about this, the relationship with other people, not going through our mom, but us being responsible for that, we have to think long term. What are we going to do when our mom is not there?
Yes.
Now is it when we're going to start trying to connect with each other? That is the time when families often drift apart. So we have to start working on that now. Because I don't want my family to drift apart, after my mom is gone.
Exactly.
It's very important. So we need to be intentional about that.
We do. And we also need to be intentional about realizing that once mom's gone, we look for one other person to take on mom's role and be the chief communicator. No, that's the perfect opportunity for us to spread that role around. Depending on what's going on, that person be the chief communicator. But don't leave that role to one person.
Yeah, it's not really fair.
No,
you know.
it really isn't fair.
And some people don't mind being the chief communicator, but most people do.
Yeah.
You know.
You do, or you realize you do when you forgot to communicate with everybody.
Yes, and then you
get
get the blame.
blamed.
That's
You
right.
quickly realize it. So to avoid that, just spread that love around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And everybody should be the author of their own story. I shouldn't
That's
be
right.
able to tell your story. You should be able to tell your own story. So I do think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And family group text chats, they're so important. Look, I will get them at 9, 10 at night, a message that just makes my day. It's
Mhm.
something funny that happened with one of the nieces or nephews, but it really lifts you up and it makes you think, oh, I really am connected to my family. They thought enough to include me in the group text. So I think those are very important.
It is.
Yeah. So now the big thing that also happens with mother and daughter relationships is the threat of other relationships coming
Yes.
in and taking either mom's place or the daughter's place.
And that happens really, basically we're talking about jealousy of your daughter or your mother's other relationships.
Right.
And this happens if we're kind of like that over connection that we talked about. Sometimes mothers rely on their daughters for their friendships or for their activities, and sometimes daughters rely on their mothers, especially here in South Louisiana.
Right.
Our family is our friends.
Right.
When we socialize, it's with family. But we have to be very careful. We have to know there has to be room for other people in our lives, especially in-laws. You get married, a lot of times mothers and mothers-in-law there'll be a little bit of friction between
Right.
them, especially if you're trying to decide whose house we're going to for a holiday or something like that. And so we have to be aware that sometimes we may feel threatened by the other relationships in your daughter's life,
Yeah.
and know that we have to have those. That
Yeah.
one relationship is never enough for any one person. We're made to live in community, and we should be happy that our daughter has the skills and is loved by so many people.
Right, because that means if you as a mom cannot step in and do this for your daughter, for whatever reason, you know there are other people that love her just as much, the mother-in-law, that will be a part of her life and help her. So you have to be able to let that in and trust that you've cultivated a healthy enough relationship with your daughter that a new relationship will not cause any problems in that. And I think that's so important. And if you feel like that relationship isn't healthy with your daughter, then work on that so that you're not threatened by someone else. And look, mother-in-laws, they can help out a lot, especially when grandkids come along.
Yes.
They can be really helpful, so make them your ally, you know.
And I'm in kind of I'm the other woman in one of those relationships. I don't have my own children,
Yeah.
but there's a woman that I think of as a daughter. I love her
Right.
very much. But I'll say to her, you know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to your mother. I'm not
Very
trying to
important.
come in
Yeah.
there, but so I won't say it very often because I know you have a mother, and I don't want to, you know, try to infringe on that relationship
Right.
at all. But just know that you are the daughter of my heart. You know,
Yeah.
I won't say it because I don't want to cause friction,
Yeah.
but it's there. And so, you know, my hope is that anyone would be happy to have someone else look at their daughter in that way, because we can
Right.
never have enough people who love us and care about us.
That's so
But I would
important.
never try to insulate myself and separate a
Right.
relationship like that. And I think mothers-in-laws are mothers, all of us, that's the part that we need to be careful about, that we're not trying to insulate ourselves and separate anybody
Right.
else. And that goes for you as a mother with your daughter, if you're trying to separate her from her relationship with her mother-in-law or a sister-in-law, someone else like
Right.
that. We have to be careful we don't do that in our own family, like trying to keep them away from their sisters or
Yes.
brothers, and you just come and see me. You know.
Right.
So we have to be careful about that. That jealousy doesn't come in and actually get in the way, especially with blended families.
Yeah,
There's so
that
many
can be
step
tough.
parents and divorced
Right.
parents, and you can have, you know, 4 sets of grandparents now, and it just becomes, it can become very complicated.
Yeah, it becomes a battle for who is going to be held in the highest esteem, who's going to get first dibs on the grandchild,
Yes.
you know, whose home are you going to come to for the holidays. And so, I mean, what we've learned to do, for instance, my daughter just, her mother-in-law's birthday was about a few weeks ago, and she said, oh, we're going to take her out to eat and we're going to do this and the other. And then a few days later, she called and said, were you upset that I took my mother-in-law out to dinner? No, you do the same thing with us. That's what we do in the family. She said, well, yeah, because their family, they don't typically do that, and we're trying to get them into the habit of doing that. I said, I will never be upset about that. Please do that. Because I also thought, oh, that gave me a weekend free that I didn't have to go and do the shopping with you and look for baby stuff. Mother-in-law got an opportunity to do that, and I got an opportunity to do other things. So I think if we change our perception about it and see them as helping relationships, and just remember the ultimate goal is the person we all love, and that person feels love from all of us without the conflict, it can work for everybody.
And it's like they say that love is unlimited. We don't just have a certain amount of love that has to be divided to everybody.
Exactly.
And if we bring a new person in, everybody has less love, you know, because we have to share it among more people. So the more people, the more exponentially that it grows. And so
yes, and the better we feel.
And your daughter did absolutely the right thing when she was concerned that maybe you were upset. She just checked it out. You know, how many of us just worry about that without checking it out? So it's very important to communicate that.
It is really important. And just to remember that with our daughters, what I say to my daughters and what I say to other friends' daughters when they have concerns, because you know sometimes they'll go to the other mom and talk, and I'll say, and their thought a lot of times is, oh well, she does more for my sister than she does for me or for my brother. What I try and remind our adult children of is the fact that as mothers, we tend to give. As mothers, or as those of us who have taken kids under our wings, we give to the kid who needs us the most. So in that moment, if the middle child needs us the most, the middle child is going to get the most. Then in the next moment, if it's the older child that needs it, we're going to give to them the most. The love never changes. It's just that the time we have to put in may change based on the need of the child. So we still love you both unconditionally, but if they remember that, I think it will help them out a lot as well.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to wrap up by giving you just a little bit more information, and this information actually comes from a website, and it's called verywellfamily.com. And if you go there, it's really kind of a nonprofit website that gives a lot of information about families and relationships. We, you know, all of these are helpful tips that we can use a lot. And so if you go there, you'll get a lot more information about different relationships and issues in the families that can be very helpful. So if you want to know more about this or read more about it, you can go to the website, and they'll have that information on the screen for you to look at, where you can get more information about this and other topics related to the well-being of your family.
Yes. And if not your own family, if your own family's doing well, you've worked out all these issues, go to the site and get information to help out another family. We have to help each other out because, as you said, we were put here to be in community, not alone.
Yes.
So that's so important. Again, Suzanne, thank you for a very important topic.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate it. And thanks to you, our viewers, for spending your time with us for this episode of Ascension Counseling Center's video newsletter. Remember, you can catch replays of the program exclusively on Ascension 21 on the days and times listed on your screen, and anytime on Ascension 21's YouTube channel. We hope today's information will help change your life for the better. That's our goal at Ascension Counseling Center, for our programs to help change lives. Remember, Ascension Counseling Center is here by way of your support. We're funded by a 2-mil property tax millage, which means that $2 from every $1,000 you pay in taxes goes to support our agency so we can provide free and low-cost mental health and substance abuse outpatient services to residents of Ascension. We're located in Gonzales at 1112 Southeast Ascension Complex Boulevard, off Worthy Road, across from the courthouse and next to the health unit. You can reach us by calling 225-450-1016. You can also find us on the web at ascensionparish.net/MH and on Facebook at Ascension Counseling Center. You can also hear us on KKAY-AM 1590 every Tuesday from 10 to 10:30 a.m. Thanks for your support, and until next time, from everyone at Ascension Counseling Center, thank you for watching.
We see a lot of children that are actually being raised by their grandparents. There are so many resources that we can help you with to help you figure out what to do with this child, to help this child understand what his goal in life is. Having one little boy come in and hate his life and have a scowl on his face and not want to be there, and then a month or so later befriend him and come in and smile at me and talk to me and give me a hug, which those children don't do that very often. So by having that hug rewards me more than any paycheck that a person could give me. It's more fulfilling than anything else that job could possibly give me, by seeing a patient or a child or an adult's life completely turned around. Hi, my name is Lisa Lopez, and I'm a nurse at the Ascension Counseling Center.